If you buy a new home, this could be the biggest mistake that you've ever made. If you get the cheapest LVP, that will be replaced in the next 3 to 5 years, guaranteed.
So you're thinking about buying a home in the Sacramento area, or you're getting ready to list a home, and you're wondering about true, legit remodeling costs, if it's worth it. We're going to talk to the man, the myth, the legend, Dan Loesch here. Dan, how's it going?
Good, Mark. Happy to be here in the studio. It's awesome. Thank you for having me, and we can talk a little bit about remodeling today.
All right, hit me. So as far as like a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing on the market are things that need work, need a little love and everything too. So a lot of people go into these houses, they don't have a really accurate, they're not able to kind of like give a good estimate for themselves, and they want to know how much things cost and everything too. So that's kind of where you come in. You work with a lot of clients who are looking to buy and maybe remodel, correct?
Yeah, and my main goal is to show your audience, hey, what are we getting into before we buy? What are the costs? What's the pitfalls? What does this house need? What's going to get me the bang for the buck if I sell? So those things we're going to talk about today.
Okay. Now, let me ask you something. What you're noticing more, or at least what I'm noticing, is that a lot of people are kind of just throwing their house on the market. There's a lot of fixtures on the market or stuff that maybe needs a little bit of TLC and everything too. Are you seeing from your end more than the norm these days?
Yeah. It's getting harder and harder to sell a home with where we're at in the market today. So people are doing the small little things to fix up their house, replacing a door, replacing the siding. And that's really what I would recommend. Remodeling.net has a study every year that comes out called Cost versus Value. And they talk about all the different projects that you can do. And some of the ones with more bang for the buck are like siding replacement, cosmetic things, like a kitchen facelift, not a full remodel, but things like new backsplash, new finishes. Those can go a long way in selling your house.
Okay, so let me ask you something. Before we get into all this stuff too, we all have to carve out a little space for the new homes. As far as new homes go, as far as people when they're looking for like finishes, upgrade, like as far as builder quality goes, like which one would you invest the most into? Like Toll Brothers has crazy expensive finishes. Are they worth it?
Oh, definitely. Because you get one stab at it, right? And these finishes are going to last 30, 40 years before they're being remodeled again. So I would definitely spend that money on the waterfall edge on the countertops, on the interior insulation for soundproofing, because you get to do that before the drywall goes on. It's going to be cheaper, even if you're saying, I'm going to spend $20,000, $30,000 on these upgrades. It's going to make more sense to do it at the build than it will 10 years later when you have to take off finishes to put them on, right?
Okay, so I've been noticing also in communities like Blackstone, for example, like it's like all a Lennar community. A lot of people went there, got bare bones Lennar homes, and then they went in after the fact and decked it out with like probably really higher end than Lennar quality products. What would you say as far as like price points, as far as like, if you go to Lennar and, do you go crazy, or do you say to yourself it's more about the location and then after the fact, because Lennar, as far as I know, doesn't do the waterfall edge, doesn't do like really high end finishes. So like, what do you think?
So what I would say is get yourself educated, right? Give me a call, give a contractor a call, and figure out exactly, what upgrades they're overcharging and what ones they're undercharging, right? So some of these builders will charge quadruple, quintuple what they really should be charging on their upgrades, right? So in that case, $50,000 for an upgraded LVP or tile on your floor, not worth it, right?
Okay.
But the average homeowner doesn't know that, right? They're going to need to talk to a professional like myself to figure that out. So I highly recommend just calling me and saying, Dan, look, they're going to hit me for a $10,000 upgrade on this, $20,000 on that, and then we'll go through it and see which ones are worth it.
Okay. Are there any specific builders that you might want to watch for as far as upgrades go? If you're going in like a KB, or if you're going someone like that, would you just go bare bones?
On a KB, yes, I would. I would get whatever they have, the minimum. Some of these builders will do things like they'll put just a no lip on their countertops and charge you extra for the lip, which is hilarious because that's pretty standard in remodeling, right? I would say with KB, I would not do any upgrades. Simple builder, maybe Lennar, like you said. But as you keep going up the grade in builders, the JMCs, the Toll Brothers, right, the Tim Lewis homes, those guys are going to do a great job on the upgrades, and they're going to warranty them too.
Okay. So for new homes, and we'll say one last thing on new homes is the majority of the builders have that 10-year structural warranty, correct?
Yeah.
How often right now are you seeing people have issues with their new homes? Is it?
I would say with the state of class action lawsuits, all the time. It's usually something like stucco failure. Stucco cracks. It's a cementitious product, right? You don't know when that stucco is going to, especially with a one coat. And so that's what you're seeing is a lot of water intrusion from those things. A lot of these builders are doing things like cutting into structural members, and then a few years later, you start seeing some sagging in the floors. So it's actually pretty common to see, a truss member cut, and then 5 years later, hey, we've got a sagging ceiling, right? So wouldn't say it happens all the time, but it's definitely, a 1 out of 100 homes possibly.
Okay, so if someone said to you, hey, I'm buying a Lennar home, what do you think about doing an inspection all the way through? What are you saying?
Yeah, I would hire a third-party inspector. If you're in a budget build, I used to do engineering design for production homes, and we would see things all the time of plumbers cutting massive holes into TGI joists, and you don't catch that later on. You need to see that at frame, right? And if you don't hire a third-party inspector, that could have been done after the inspection for the city. You don't know. Right. So you need to bring someone in that's on your team.
Okay. So here, guys, listen, Dan's here if you need his help as far as new home inspections, things to watch at. If you guys are buying a new home, I would definitely suggest reaching out to Dan. His contact information is going to be below. I can't talk today. Also, if you're enjoying this style of video where we're bringing builders, contractors on to talk a little bit about build quality and things to do, please like, subscribe. And as always, your comments and questions are very welcome. Dan and myself will go over them, answer them to the best of our abilities. Okay, so now let's get into another huge topic, remodel costs, okay? So break us down some things that are commonly asked for you to do and break down about how much they cost, materials, all that fun stuff.
So right now, the big trend in remodeling is additions, right? What the market is, the way it is, we are often seeing people staying put, saying, I want a bigger home, so I'm going to improve the size of mine. What they don't realize is they'll have to maybe upgrade a panel with that, or they need to do some extra utility work. And those are those hidden costs that they don't see. And so they're often surprised about addition costs. They're also often surprised about even remodeling costs in general, because 5 years ago, before all the supply chain issues, before we had issues with manufacturing overseas, they were a lot cheaper. We've probably doubled the cost of remodeling in the last 5-6 years. So definitely a lot of sticker shock.
Okay, so as far as you go, ADUs are a big deal, right? People are buying houses with larger lots to build ADUs because of the, getting rental units and everything too. As far as your ADU, what would you say would be price per square foot, low end to high end? I
would say your low end, everything is, disclaimer, everything is very unique. I don't like giving square foot prices, but I would say that for something very basic, probably about $300 a square foot. And something very unique, maybe $500 a square foot. I've even had friends that have done ADUs luxury market for $1,000 a square foot. That's a very, very much an exception. Okay. But typically $300 to $500 a square foot is your price.
Okay. And for a lot of these places, I mean, let's say you're going for the luxury ADU. It's kind of like a pool house. It's not going to be rented. It's not really for anything more. But for more of the people who are building ADUs, it's more for rentals, correct? For investments.
Actually, what we're finding now is it's more for moving family members in. We're bringing in a ton of mom and dads because the price of nursing homes and facilities is through the roof. It could cost well over $100,000 a year just to house a family member in a facility. So what we're finding is you get a loan and maybe you're at $2,000 a month, $3,000. Well, that's a third of what you would have been spending in that case. For rental incomes, we're finding traveling nurses. Right, they're renting, and they're doing very well on those because they get a very large stipend and they stay for 2 to 3 months. If you don't like your tenant, you got a new tenant. So it's almost like an Airbnb situation, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, one of our realtors on our team, Melanie, she actually is totally connected to that network of traveling nurses. So we have some clients who, when they go to buy a property and they want to do the traveling nurses thing, she can get them on all the HR departments and everything at nurses or hospitals around the Sacramento area. So it's been working pretty well for our clients so far.
If you look at rents, Mark, in the last 5 years in the Sacramento area, it's almost doubled. I mean, the average studio has gone from $1,100 to $1,900 in 5 years. So we were between somewhere in a studio rental and a 2-bedroom rental on average in Sacramento. You could be seeing as much as $2,500 a month on one of these rentals. So with that said, what's that going to be in another 5 years? $4,000, $5,000 a month? Who knows? Okay. So your ROI could be anywhere from 6 years to 8 years on one of these projects, which is huge.
All right, so let me ask you something. I see all these YouTube videos for people doing the ADU thing themselves and building it from scratch, and I've seen all this kind of stuff too. Like, what would be some of the pitfalls that you're seeing? Because I'm sure you go into some situations where, like, we started on our own, or our general contractor started it, and we did this, and we don't know where we are right now. Do you see that much?
We're probably on our 20th ADU build in the last few years. And I got to say, we still find surprises with utility companies, with the power lines now have to be undergrounded because of this specific situation on a lot. The average homeowner should not be doing an ADU project. You don't know what you're getting into as far as sewer. You don't know what you're getting as far into gas, into electrical. I would say you're going to be into it an extra 6 months longer than you thought, and you're probably going to be into it for an extra $100,000 if you're doing it yourself.
Ouch. Okay. Yeah. So I would say if someone's looking for ADU advice and everything too, I mean, you got a great Instagram account and everything too. So it's kind of one of those things where reach out to the professional. And Dan's local to Sacramento as well too. He can kind of talk to you about HOAs and everything. So let's go into some remodeling costs right now. That was a shameless plug for you, by the way.
That's great.
Flooring. What are we looking at?
Flooring, I mean, you could spend on let's say 1,000 square foot house. You're replacing your flooring. You're doing an LVP. You could be talking about $3 to $4 a square foot installation costs from an actual reliable contractor, and maybe another $5 or $6 a square foot for a decent LVP product. So you're talking about $10,000 plus. Tile, you could be talking about double that, right? $20,000, $30,000, depending on the tile. Those are a large cost, but highly recommend doing them, right? If you look at the cost versus value report, the high ticket items are all the finishes. That's what draws people in. Besides the HVAC replacement, which is huge, by the way, replace your HVAC if you have an old unit that is just drawing energy. All of your finishes, your tile, your backsplash, your minor kitchen update, your minor bathroom remodel, those are going to net you anywhere from 60 to 90% immediate equity in that project.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty. They're really pretty. Now, here's the thing, guys. Before we get going on the video, this is Sacramento specific. Pricing, all that kind of fun stuff, too. Everywhere is different. Everywhere in the United States is different. I know material pricing somewhat is the same, but we're trying to give you stuff that if you're moving into the Sacramento area and you're thinking about buying a home, these are kind of remodeling costs that you should kind of figure out that's what you're going to spend. And also, if you're doing the new home thing, this is what it looks like. But this is what it looks like in Sacramento, and this is why we're bringing you this content on the Sacramento Real Estate channel. So just be aware, this is Sacramento specific just for you. Okay, so what is the difference between LVP and tile? I know the difference is, but like what the cost-wise, it seems like tile is double.
So we did a video about a year and a half ago, tile versus LVP on our Instagram account, and it got like 100,000 views. It got people mad at each other. There was fire between the tile crowd and the LVP crowd. The LVP is junk. Oh yeah, I want to tell you this. LVP varies greatly in quality. If you get the cheapest LVP, that will be replaced in the next 3 to 5 years, guaranteed. It is not waterproof. You need to upgrade to something with a stone core. You need to have something with a vinyl bottom or a rubber bottom, something that doesn't have organic materials. If you have a cork bottom, that is a high chance of buckling. So that is what these people typically talk about when they say, oh, LVP is junk, right? They're getting the $2 square foot stuff at Floor & Decor, and you need to be upgrading to something that doesn't have organic materials. With that said, you lay that, you do a good job, you snap everything together correctly, use a proper underlayment, that's going to last you 10, 20 years minimum. Now, tile, on the other hand, you're going to spend double, but that's going to last literally the entirety of your home stay. You're going to have it 40, 50 years from now if you seal it, you protect it, you make sure that you lay it correctly.
Okay. The other thing, too, I like about tile, I always tell people pros and cons of tile and LVP, right? Mm-hmm. Tile during winter is freezing cold, but during summer, it's cooler than LVP is.
Yeah.
Now, with tile, the biggest problem I had with tile was the fact that it's hard. I mean, it's like, boom, rock hard. Yeah. So you got to wear some slippers or something, or else you can get some, like...
Yeah, my kids like to hang off the couch and just fall and face plant right on the tile. It's terrible. The LVP has a lot of give, right? Yeah. And so you fall on that, you get the underlayment, you get that nice soft core. You don't have that issue, right? You can actually feel the give in the LVP. So definitely a plus for the LVP.
Okay, now the plus for the tile, and this is huge, and a lot of people don't know this, is that if you break a tile, you take the piece out, you put a brand new tile in. LVP is like a jigsaw puzzle, so you got to do a whole section, correct?
Yeah, you're interlocking both the horizontal and vertical side, right? So now you have to, if you have something in the middle, you're taking that off all the way to the nearest wall, maybe the nearest 2 walls, right? So you could be getting rid of up to 400 or 500 square feet just to replace one of them, right? You can also cut the lips off and glue it in, but that's kind of a hokey way to fix it, right? So tile, we've had issues with one of our tiles breaking, and 5 years later, popped a brand new one in, right? So definite plus on tile.
Now for the investor, what are they leaning more towards?
I would say LVP for sure, because there's certain things that an investor doesn't realize is, although they may say no smoking in the house, that tenant will probably bring some smoke into the house if they are a smoker, right?
Okay.
Or vaping, right? Those get into the building materials. They'll get into not just the paint, but they'll get into the drywall. They'll get into the flooring. So you're going to have to replace a lot of that flooring anyway, right? So I wouldn't go too crazy on a rental property. I would get disposable flooring that needs to be replaced in 5-10 years, because it's going to have to be anyway, right?
All right.
No animals, right? That's a big thing. You ever seen own a property where you said no animals, and then you go, well, why is this dog pee everywhere, right? You know, it's not the tenant.
It was me. Yeah, I know. Well, okay, so animal. Okay, now another question is, and I know I want to make sure I hit all these questions I have myself. As far as for homes, as far as like all this kind of stuff, like for an investor, what would be the things that you would invest in a house as far as to give you the durability, but not something that's going to cost a huge amount of money?
Oh man, that's a tough question. I would say the siding for sure, because you're going to get that curb appeal. You're going to draw more people in, right? If you can stucco a house for a reasonable price, you have a good stucco guy, man, it looks great, and it's going to last forever. You can put a nice elastomeric paint on that thing. You don't have to touch for 50 years.
Cost
to stucco a whole house, you could be talking about $20,000-$30,000 if it's a medium-sized, small-size house, right? So significant. 2-story, you could be talking about 50 or 60.
Okay, now let's talk about, for me, whenever I'm showing the homes, first of all, you're right. The curb appeal is something that gets them in the door. But the two things that always seem to be like those items that can get you that extra bang for your buck if you're selling your home, the kitchen and the primary bed and bath. Yeah. So talk about a kitchen upgrade, because we got a lot of those Brady Bunch homes here, with the wood that's kind of like older, that just knows, what are you thinking as far as a refresh for a kitchen?
So I love that you asked that question, because this study that I cited earlier, the cost versus value study, they break down the difference between a kitchen remodel and a kitchen update, right? The main difference I find is a kitchen remodel. I mean, that costs about $80-something thousand on average in the Sacramento area. That's taking out all the cabinetry, bringing it down to studs, replacing a ton of electrical, right? Now, that is great if you're going to live in the house. But what you really want if you're going to sell that house is you're going to want the new backsplash, you're going to want the new countertops, and maybe just a reface of the cabinets, maybe new doors, maybe new drawers. That might cost $30,000, $35,000. But they're going to look at that. That's going to net something like 70-80% in equity right away.
Okay.
And then now your house is at that higher comp, right? So you may draw that buyer in that just says, oh, I love this. This is great. I don't have to do anything, right? Yeah. Throw an extra $100,000 at the house, and you've just made a ton of money. Right.
Well, I think right now, low inventory, higher interest rates, people want to really fall in love with the house too. I still don't think, even though inventory is low, I don't think people are just like, give me anything. I think people are like, if I'm going to be paying close to 7% interest rates, I need to fall in love with the house. And nothing makes you fall in love with the house more than, curb appeal, walking in the door and seeing this kitchen, and you're thinking Thanksgiving, you're thinking 4th of July, you're thinking entertaining, you're thinking, that along with the what's called great room concept is popping. Then you walk them upstairs, or you walk them over to where the primary is, and if they feel the space and how it's pretty with the lighting, and it flows into the primary bedroom or primary bathroom, it rocks. So as far as refreshes versus remodels on those, what are you thinking?
Well, obviously refreshes. I wouldn't do a full gut to studs. Although I will tell you this, the savvy buyer is now the buyer, right? The professional that knows what to look for. That person who doesn't have a lot of time, because they're busy in their work. They're an executive. They're high up in management. They also don't want a remodeler in their house for 6 months when they buy this house.
Right.
So they're going to be looking at things like, oh, does this have a Zinsco panel? Do I need to do a panel upgrade? Is that going to leave me without electricity for 2 days and I can't do a Zoom call with my team? Am I going to have to repipe this whole house? Am I not going to have water pressure? Right, so they're going to be looking at those things, right? So if you're going to be selling in that $1 million plus range, you're really going to want to start looking at, does this have a new HVAC unit? Does this have a new water heater? you're going to want to hit all of those structural issues, and you're going to be doing more of the remodeling as opposed to the upgrading, updating. So I would definitely say you have two different markets.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now that you hit that specifically, HVAC costs. How much is it to replace an HVAC?
Most recent project we had a full system gut was about $25,000-$30,000. Obviously, it matters if you have more than one zone. A lot of these houses you'll see. These new builds, 3,000, 4,000 square feet, you're going to have 2 or 3 HVAC units. Right? Yeah. So now you're multiplying that by 2 or 3. It's a big expense, right? But it's great to have multiple zones because sometimes one zone will go out. You can still have somewhat of a cool house in the summer, right? So, you're talking about anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000.
Okay. Now we're going to hit a big ticket item we haven't hit on just yet: the roof. Let's talk a little bit about roofs. I mean, I sold a house over in Shelbourne in Grand Bay. The roof was like $120,000. So what are we looking at as far as roof costs?
Yeah, those Shelbourne houses are great, but they have the old wood shake on half of them.
And it's the pitch, right?
Yeah.
The pitch really, really equates how much also they charge to do the roof. They're like, the guy came out there, the roof guy came out and looked at it and he's like, it's like this. It's really a hard thing to replace. So walk us through a little bit about roofs, because that's a big thing. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to buy a house in East Sacramento where you have that really beautiful cathedral rooftop where it's a 12 and 12 plus pitch, or Shelbourne or Granite Bay, some of the houses with really ornate roofs, a lot of valleys, a lot of hips, especially if you're going to go with like a steel roof or you're going to go with a tile roof.
Yeah.
Man, those can get into the 6 figures. And they can get there fast. And you wouldn't think it, but a 3,000, 4,000 square foot roof, that's getting up there at least $60,000 for a tile roof.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so as far as your average roof, let's say you're buying a house maybe in Rancho, Roseville. No, we'll go Rancho. You got a comp, what does that look like as far as?
Comp roofs are the standard. You're going to probably for a medium grade, $20,000 on a standard 2,000 square foot house, 30,000 in some cases. Sometimes they might have a low pitched roof coming off the side. They have to do a torch down product, but we're finding anywhere between $20,000 and $35,000 for a standard size roof.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about landscaping, because landscaping is big. Do you do a lot of landscaping, or do you have someone who you work with?
We usually sub that work out, but I know the pricing. We talk to our other subs and friends in the industry, and if you want to have that statement backyard, you could spend another $100,000 easy. We do patio covers and outdoor kitchens. It's usually the last thing someone does to their house. You're probably not going to get the equity out of it, right? So bang for your buck. But for me, I've got an outdoor kitchen in my backyard I built, and I got to tell you, every Saturday, my kids and I are out there. We love it. The best decision I made. Yeah, I'm throwing money away technically, but it's great.
Here's the thing for me. I think a lot of people, though, a lot of our buyers tend to be Bay Area buyers and coming into the area. And they want the nice house. They want the great room concept. They want it to be really, really awesome. Old school, like the Cribs, MTV Cribs. They want something great. But one of the things they also want that's almost a must is the idea that they want a backyard entertainment area. They want to entertain. They want to have that house that if COVID happens again or whatnot, that they can have a place where they can they don't have to leave. People like their compounds, and that's what they like in Sacramento. So as far as landscaping, and also new homes, right? You get a dirt lot. Yeah. There's nothing out there. So you have some good landscapers too, correct? That you can that you work with?
I can definitely recommend you to a few.
Okay.
Sure.
So if you are someone closing a new home, talk to Dan. He's got some great landscapers that can work with you as well too if you're looking for a specific project. And here's the thing that I always find too is people who are looking for landscaping will always say, we're looking for landscaping, but we want to replace this inside. We want to replace that in time. So let me ask you something. Okay. So as far as someone going into a house, these are the things I always recommend to them. Well, look, if you don't want to spend a lot in upgrades, like a new home, right? I say do the flooring and do the electrical wiring. Wiring tends to be one of those things that it makes more sense to do ahead of time. Do you know what I mean? And maybe do some of the stuff that once you get furniture in a house, it's not an easy thing to kind of do remodels. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and people really overestimate the amount of effort into a whole house rewire. You're gonna have to cut some holes in some walls. Yeah, some drywall patching, but you're right. Once you have the couch in there, once you have the appliances in there, once you have everything in there, it's a pain in the neck. You're never going to do it again, right? Same thing with if you want to go with a smooth wall versus a textured, right? Do it now.
Oh, yeah.
You will never be able to do it again. You'll have to get a pod, put all your stuff out there, and it will cost 4 times as much, and your life will be drastically impacted, right? So a rewire, you may have 20 circuits in your house, right? They may have to cut 30 to 40 holes in your walls, right? You could have a good drywall come by for a few $1,000, patch all of those holes, and now you're just repainting, right? And most people repaint when they move in anyway, right?
Yeah.
And so I think a whole house rewire is a great idea, especially a panel change too.
Oh yeah.
Because if you're going to upgrade your power, then you don't have to have the power off while you're living in it. Like I said about the Zoom calls, you wouldn't believe how many people work from home now that I see, and that's a major disruption not to have internet for a day.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dan, in the Sacramento area, what do you see the future of remodeling being?
So if I had to say the present is ADUs, the past was kitchen and bath upgrades, I would say the future is going to be additions, right? What you're seeing now in these new builds is a lot of multifamily. Everyone is going denser and denser and denser. So to have a big lot is rare, right? And you're not going to want to move from a bigger lot to a smaller lot. So what they're going to say is man, I wish I had the home office. I wish I had an extra bedroom for my guests, right? How can I accomplish that? Well, I have to build an addition. And you're going to see master suite additions. You're going to see additions, pool house ADUs type things, so you can move mom in, more of that. But look for the bigger house from the small house and the big lot.
Okay, cool. Now, guys, we're going to have Dan on continuously. We're going to be talking about different builders, Tim Loesch versus Lennar. We're going to talk about all that stuff. We're going to also talk about custom versus semi-custom. We're going to hit all the topics that I've been getting calls about lately. Dan is the man, the myth, the legend. Like, he is a general contractor. He builds homes from scratch. He does additions. So he's a great resource. Not only that, at one point or another, he's worked for every single builder in the Sacramento area. This is Sacramento specific. Dan, any parting words for our audience?
Well, thanks for having me. This studio is great, and I'll see you next time.
All right, guys, until next video, like, comment, subscribe. Like I said, either reach out to Dan, or if you have questions that you want us to hit for future videos, comment below. Until next time, guys, this is Mark. We're out of here.